Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and those of you struggling with your gender issues. Okay. So I say in San Francisco, you have to say it properly. Do you have to press on?
I already pressed.
You ready to press on?
Yes.
Okay, let's begin with a short story while people are still coming in. Last year, something crazy happened to me. It was actually, technically speaking, this year. It was in February. And yeah, it was the winter in America. This February, I did a Sábáton in the place where I lived for many years, a place called Memphis, Tennessee. And afterwards, I decided to do what I enjoy a lot, which is called a road trip, because I like to go out in the big wide road on my own and see different places and different people. So I arranged for myself to speak in St. Louis, and then afterwards in Kansas City, and then Des Moines, Iowa, and then I was going to end in a place called Minneapolis in Minnesota, which is right near the Canadian border. So I don't know if you know your basic map of America, but basically I started off, I rented a pickup truck because I wanted to feel this is the real thing, not just a fake thing. I got myself a dog in the back, I got myself a country station, and I was listening to like the real stuff, put on my sunglasses, and I'm off. And I started off, I take the, those of you that know Memphis, I crossed over the Mississippi, I went north, 55 north, I went past Blytheville, Arkansas, Cape Girardeau, crossed into the Missouri line, went to St. Louis. I gave 4 classes in St. Louis, then I moved over to Kansas City. You take the 60 west. You cross over into Kansas. There I spoke a couple of times in Kansas. I spoke to the youth, I spoke to the community. And then afterwards I started to go north. But what was happening is that I was realizing I wasn't getting enough sleep. And I was realizing that as I'm getting north, it's getting colder and colder, and I'm starting to get sick. And I didn't realize that I had basically what's called the flu. Yeah, how do you say flu in Hungarian?
Influenza.
Influenza, okay? Open the window and influenza. That's what happened over here, okay? Open the door and income tax. Anyhow, so the point is that here I am, I'm getting further and further. By the time I get to Minneapolis, I am completely sick. My head is spinning, and I'm coughing and I'm spinning and I'm feeling disgusting and really gross. And I arrive in Minneapolis late in the evening, and I'm staying at my incredibly wonderful warm hosts over there. But Minneapolis in the winter, you might as well be in the Arctic Circle. There's no question about it. You feel like you're going to knock over polar bears and people should live in igloos. Just to get you an idea, the people that I stayed at, the owner actually owned his own personal snowplow. So you could get out in the mornings. You never get this in Hungary. It never goes like, 6 inches. Everything is ice. Everything is freezing. Everything is disgusting over there. And I'm stuck. There's absolutely nothing I can do. Here I am in Minneapolis. I called up my wife, and she says to me, "You're sick. You should not be teaching tomorrow." I said, "Tomorrow I have to teach 4 times. 4 times for Esha Torah. I'm teaching for the community, for the Kolel, for the school. I have to teach tomorrow." He says, "No. You got to promise me you're not going to go until you first go to a doctor." So, you don't argue with your wife, right? You never argue with your wife. Okay? You got to do what you did. So the people, the fellow that I was staying with, Brian and Heather Pergamon, that was their names. If you ever stuck in Minneapolis, which I don't recommend, you should go and stay by the Pergamons. They are so warm and generous, wonderful people. And there was midnight. He takes me to the Baptist Methodist East Hospital. It's a huge hospital over there that has special arrangements for people that come late and want to be checked by doctors. So I come in, and there's a woman behind the counter, and her name is Shannon. She had a Shannon written over here, and she says to me, "Excuse me, sir, just tell me your symptoms and a little bit about you." So I start to explain. I have these headaches and things, and I'm queasy, and I'm all like fluey and thing, and I'm seeing double, and I just got like this splitting headache, and I don't feel good, and I'm nauseous and feeling faint. Then she says to me, "Let me ask you a question." He says, "Is it true that you are from Israel?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm from Israel." And then she says to me, wait a second. Israel is in the Middle East, is that right?" I go, yeah, Shannon, Israel is in the Middle East. And then she says to me, and the Middle East is next to Africa. And I go, yeah, the Middle East is actually next to Africa. So she goes, oh my gosh, you may have Ebola. And she starts to go crazy. She presses a red button, and suddenly an alarm goes off. Auga, auga. And suddenly nurses come, and they're all covered with like these white things over their faces. And they take me away, and they put me into a special room, which is totally sterile. And the doctors come in one by one, checking me over. And for the next 4 hours, I had a CAT scan. They gave me every single kind of check they can. There was like bits of blood coming all over the place. And at 4 in the morning, a doctor comes in and says, sir, we'd like to tell you that after all our research, that you have the flu. So I learned a tremendous lesson. It was incredible. Shannon taught me about how we look at people and just make assumptions. And this is what I want to talk about a little bit in today's class, because I want to ask every person here a very, very personal question. And it's actually, this is not so personal. I want to ask yourself, how many years have you been alive? Okay, Olivia, okay? I want to ask you, can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
You don't mind. Maybe I should ask your husband, the mathematician. But whoever wants to answer, how many years have you been alive? Are you embarrassed to tell us?
27.
27 years. When's your birthday? When are you turning 28?
March.
March. So in this March, you will have completed 27 years of your life, and you'll begin your 28th year. Is that right? Okay, so everyone agrees that this March, the wonderful Olivia, who, the reason why I like to get to know her, because one day I'm going to be her agent, when she becomes a world-famous teaching dance to special needs kids, and we're going to send this around the world, and it's going to be called the something method. What's your family name? The Holmat method of dance and education, and this is it. This is how I'm going to marry off my grandchildren. We're going to be famous together. So I want to ask you. Is it correct to say that this May, everyone agrees, this March, that Olivia, who is the future leader of the Holmat method, is going to be completing 28 years of being alive? Is that right? 27 years of being alive, is that correct? No. Everyone agrees with that? No. It's a trick question.
28.
What?
28.
No, it's not a mathematics question. First of all, I'm not good at math, and we're surrounded with mathematicians in this room, so I'm not messing with them. This is a religious question. 27 full years of being alive, So this is the trick question. In your mother's womb, no offense, but you were alive for an extra 9 months. Is that right? As we already know that at a certain point...
She said it, but she's not loud. She said this out loud.
There we go. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so this is the correct answer is that you are, at one point, you are a fertilized ovum with a neshama attached, and at that moment you are actually you. Believe it or not, the Torah says you are actually you. For 9 months, the soul comes in at the moment of the fertilization, and it only comes in completely after 40 days. But really, for 9 months, you are, technically speaking, you. And the Talmud, in Tractate Nida, asked the question, what exactly happens for 9 months in the womb? So, where are the medical people over here? So this is like today, the 21st century, we can actually know through the power of ultrasound, we know every single small detail of what happens. And the Talmud, in case you think they were primitive in those days, the Talmud tells us in great detail about the bodily changes that go through the 3 trimesters. It was common knowledge. It wasn't just the Talmudics. Already the Greeks, so they already had knowledge about the world, was called the world of the fetus, the world inside the womb. And then the Gemara asks the following question. What exactly happens inside the womb? And we need to know this because if we know the first world that we exist in, then we understand how to prepare for the next world. In other words, every human being goes through 3 universes, the world of the womb. Then we have what we call this world. And then what we spoke about last night is the next world, which is right here. Everything is right here. When you're inside your mother's womb, you're still in this world. Here, we're now in this world. And the next world is also right here, As we explained, it's the world of Hashem Echad, where everything becomes one, everything is a harmony, everything fits in, the world is in perfection. Those are the three universes that we go through. What exactly happens to us in our mother's womb? So that is what I want to talk about over the next few minutes. But before we do that, a word in Hungarian. You're going to have to stand into the mirror over here. Okay. It's Binyamin over here. Great translator. Go for it.
Először elmesélte nekünk az amerikai útját, ami most...
Skip the story. You can skip the story. Yeah, it's good.
Igen. The whole...
Yeah, the story is not worth repeating.
Okay. Szóval, hogy azt kérdezte az Oliviától, hogy hány éves és hogy mennyi évet töltött életben, hogy a kettő az ugye nem egyenlő, mert hogy most lesz márciusban 27 éves, és ő fogja feltalálni a harmadmódszert. És ki fogja házasítani a Rabbi ura unokáját. És hogy többet élt igazából 9 hónappal ezek szerint, mert a anyjának a méhében még élt az is, addig is élt, és erről már a Talmud is beszél, hogy akkor mi történik, amikor megkapjuk a lelkünket, és nagyon fontos erről tudnunk, mert az eljövendő világ, amiről tegnap volt szó, hogy az a világ, hogy az örökkévaló egy, arról, hogy tudást nyerjünk, ahhoz tudnunk kell azt, hogy honnan jövünk, hova vagyunk, és hogy hol vagyunk, és egyébként mindez a három világ itt van, mert amikor az anyunk méhében voltunk, akkor is itt voltunk, csak egyel beljebb, és ez a világ szintén, az eljövendő világ szintén helyileg itt fog megvalósulni.
Perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so the Talmud says basically three things happen. At the very beginning, the Talmud asks, Vlad b'me'ei imo lema daimeh. What do we actually look like in our mother's womb? And the Talmud answers, lepinkas shemukupal, like a folded accountant's ledger, which means, I have in front of me a book, which I'm going to tell you later was written by my great-grandfather. We'll get there in a moment. But this book over here, if you have a little bit of imagination, and you see this is a folded accountant's ledger, and you see over here, here's the head, and here's the feet, and here's the back of the child. So you can sort of imagine the fetal position. Do you see the fetal position over here? You see it, Ernest, the fetal position? It's important to be earnest. By Oscar Wilde. You see, this is the fetal position over here. You see this? So, the Maharal of Prague says, this is crazy. He says, what are you thinking over here that we look like? Is this the best that the rabbis can do? A folded accountant's ledger? We do not look like in a folded accountant's ledger. We are much more complex in the mother's womb. If you want to use a metaphor, why are you using a folded accountant's ledger? It's something strange and bizarre that the Talmud feels that to compare us to something, it has to be a folded accountant's ledger. So that is going to be the first of three questions that I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask three questions, and I'm going to answer them with one huge, big, beautiful, and life-changing idea. So the first question is, what does it mean, the imagery of you and I? Again, I want you to make this personal. When you go back a couple of years, and then plus a little, you are in your mama's womb, and you look like a folded accountant's ledger, what does that mean? That's the first of three questions. The second question is, the Talmud says, what happens next is that you get assigned your own personal chavrusa, your own study partner. An angel comes into the womb, and the angel is specially designed for you. It's your personal angel. And the angel says to you, okay, Senor, Senorita, we are going to learn Torah together. Okay? So I always imagine the angels are from Puerto Rico, so we're just going to stay with this. And the angel sits there and studies Torah with you, and it says in the Talmud, Umelamdim oisai kol haTorah kulo. And we study kol haTorah kulo. Can someone over here please translate into English, not Hungarian, English, the phrase kol haTorah kulo? What does it mean, kol haTorah kulo?
The whole Torah.
Yes, so then just say kol haTorah. What does kol haTorah kulo mean?
In its wholeness.
The whole Torah in its wholeness. Okay, so it's a little bit extra. What do you mean? What is it? What do you mean the whole Torah in its wholeness. It's a good translation, by the way. I know I'm not, I said, what does it mean, the whole Torah in its wholeness? Just say Kol HaTorah. What does it mean, Kol HaTorah Kulo? By the way, this is not just a question on the Talmud. And you open up your siddur, and you see many, many times it says Kol HaSomething Kulo. Kol HaOlam Kulo Geshet Tzarmo. What does it mean, Kol HaSomething Kulo? What does that phrase mean? Can someone please help me here? Interactive moment, ladies and gentlemen. Anyone have something to say? The what?
Emphasizing, he says.
Okay, so that's basically the answer I'm going to give over here. What does it mean? Okay, excellent. Web designer, okay? This is fantastic. So Daniel answers very, very correctly and says that, just saying this with a little extra explanation, in Judaism there's a thing called that when you have the majority, it's like 100%. So for example, if you're learning the laws of kashrut, you're learning kosher, or you're learning sometimes the laws of blessings, you have a phrase called rubo kakulo. The majority is like 100%. Says Daniel says no. Here, in your mother's womb, you learn kol haTorah kulo. You learn the full Torah in its 100% complete Torah in its fullness, in its wholeness, like you said. You don't miss out on anything. So my second question is a very simple question. What does it mean to study the whole Torah? So thank God we live in the world where we have Lativ Kolel, and you can go in there, you can look at the books, and you can actually figure out what does it mean, the whole Torah in its, in its fullness. So we're coming up to Hanukkah. Hanukkah was the beginning of what we call the tradition of the oral law, where books were actually written. So we had the Mishnah. Well, the Mishnah is just a Mishnah. The Mishnah is 1,000 years of scholarship in there. It goes back. You have Hillel and Shammai. You have, where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes next, and he has his famous students. Then afterwards, you have Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer and their students. And then you have the generation of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Akiva has his students. And after the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's the father of the Kabbalistic movement, and you have his students, all the way down to Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Judah the Prince, no relation to a singer with a mustache. And that was okay. And thank you, you got that. And this is it. This is just one period of history. Then Torah moves over to Babylon, and in Babylon you have at the beginning you had Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, who were basically based still in Israel. You had Rav and Shmuel at the great academies on the great rivers of Babylon. They were setting up Torah academies, and for the next few hundred years they were writing the Talmud. You had Abaye and Rava, you had Rav Papa and Ravina, all the way down to the generation of Rav Ashi, who said, okay, let's write this thing together. And you have another few hundred years of scholarship. Then you have Rabbeinu Savarai, and you have the Gaonim, Reb Haigon, Reb Saadia Gaon, and then, slowly but surely, Torah moves out from Babylon, and it takes roots in North Africa, it takes root in Spain, and in southern Italy, and southern France, and you have the beginning of a period called the Rishonim. So in Spain, everyone has heard of the Rambam, and then you heard of the Ramban, Maimonides, Nachmanides, Euromonides, all these different Maimonides. They're all going to be, they're all there. You have the Rif in North Africa. You have the Gaonim of Italy in southern France. You have the Raavad, the Balamar. And then afterwards you have, in northern France, you have Rashi and the Balataisius. And then Torah starts to flourish all over Germany. And then little by little, Torah starts to move to the east of Europe. It's still flourishing around the Mediterranean basin, but you have the great academies in Eastern Europe. And then you have the Shulchan Aruch is written, the Ramah, you have the wise men of Tzfat, and the Arizal, and you have the new Kabbalistic movements, and then you have the Maharal in Prague, and then you have the Vilna Gaon, you have in Lithuania, the Baal Shem Tov starts the Hasidic movement in the Ukraine. And then here in Hungary, there was so much Torah going on. The most famous Hungarian rabbi was the Chasim Sofer, who was really in Pressburg, which is not technically speaking, is where you come from, that part of Slovakia. But the point is that he had students that went throughout Hungary and built Torah academies, including the place where my great grandfather learned in the Rugas Abosim, until eventually you have this century, you have the Chafetz Chaim in Radin, and then Torah moves after the Holocaust to Eretz Yisrael, and you have the Chazon Ish, and you have the Brisker Rav in America, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Aaron Kotler, and you have the Hasidic movement flourishing. And today there are thousands and thousands of books. Every day I go to the synagogue in Har Nof in Jerusalem, and you see they're selling new books. Every single day there's another 4 or 5 new books that are being published. What does it mean when we say that in 9 months The angel teaches us the whole Torah in its wholeness. It is absolutely impossible. It is beyond comprehension. What on earth does this mean? That is question number 2. I'm going to ask question number 3 and then I come to you. Question number 3, my third and final question is what happens before you are born? So you've been in mama's womb now for 9 months. You've learned the whole Torah in its entirety. You look like a folded accountant's ledger. And then the angel says, Señorita, oh, it's time for you to go. Okay? This is it. It's over with. 9 months are over. You have to go into the next world. Before you go, the Talmud says you have to make a promise, an oath to Enrico the angel. To your personal angel, you have to make a promise. And it says, you have to promise to be a tzaddik, v'al tiyeh rasha. V'afilu kol ha'olam kulo eimlecha tzaddik ata, tiyeh beinecha rasha. The word tzaddik in Russia normally means a good person and a bad person, but we're not going to translate it that way. Tzaddik, what we're going to say, is someone who has fulfilled his potential, and a rasha means you have not yet fulfilled your potential. So that means that before you're born, you make a little oath, and you promise to keep every single part of the Torah correctly, totally, completely, the way it's supposed to be. So my third question is a technical question. I think it's a great question, but it's a technical question. There is a rule in the Talmud, and it's brought down in Tractate Nedarim 8a, that says the following words. It says the following things. Ein shvua chal al shvua. You cannot make an oath on a pre-existing oath. So if I promise that I'm going to eat shalashudas and enjoy Hungarian food, and if I don't eat it, I'm going to take a consequence. And then 10 minutes later, I say exactly the same words again, and then I go and break my oath. How many oaths have I transgressed? Only one. The second one is not valid. Same way, says the Talmud over here, every single Jew was at Mount Sinai. What does it mean, every single Jew was at Mount Sinai? Many different answers. Your soul was there, your previous incarnation was there, but we say that every single Jew, without exception, was at Mount Sinai. Says the Talmud, you cannot make an oath to keep a mitzvah, because you already made an oath at Mount Sinai. So if I say tomorrow morning, I'm going to go to the synagogue and I'm going to say my morning prayers, it's worth nothing, because you already promised to do so at Mount Sinai. If I say that tomorrow morning I'm going to go to the synagogue and I'm going to pray really, really well to the best of my ability, that works. That means I'm going to do it really well. But to fulfill the laws, you cannot make an oath, because the oath exists already from Mount Sinai. So the third question is, so what on earth is my angel doing, telling me to make an oath before I leave, to keep the whole Torah? I have to keep the whole Torah anyhow. From Mount Sinai, I have to keep the whole Torah. So let's summarize the 3 questions. Number 1, what exactly does it mean, a folded accountant's ledger? What is this imagery of a folded accountant's ledger? Number 2, what does it mean to study the whole Torah in its entirety? This is something that is impossible. It is impossible to learn so much in such a short amount of time. It's basically an infinity of knowledge. I'm not going to talk about it today, but the Torah really, 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 really is, so to speak, entering into God's mind. Just to tell you a one-line story, I once had a teacher, his name was Rav Simcha Wasserman. His father was the greatest student of the Chafetz Chaim. His father was Rabbi Chana Wasserman. His father once asked his teacher, the Chafetz Chaim, and he said, with all of Jewish history, with all that is written, how much of God's Torah do we actually know? And the Chafetz Chaim beautifully answered, I'm going to say in Hebrew, because I heard it in Hebrew from Rabbi Wasserman, Kitipa min hayam v'hayam nishar malei, which means like a drop taken out of the ocean remains untouched. Meaning, it is not possible to learn kol haTorah kulo. Whatever we learn, we're just touching infinity, which is taking a little taste of something that is infinite. And the third question is, what's the purpose of this oath? The oath is meaningless. We already made an oath at Mount Sinai. What does it mean to make an oath on a pre-existing oath?
3 kérdést tesz fel a rabbi. Az első az, hogy amit a Talmud mond erről a méhben való létezésről, hogy az embert hasonlítja, hogy néz ki az ember, mint egy ilyen összehajtott, egy ilyen elszámolási füzetke, hogy hát tényleg az az állapot, hogy így összehajtva van az ember ottan az anyamékben, de ezt látjuk az ultrahangon, de mégiscsak nem ehhez hasonlítanánk, és ezt kérdezi a Maharál is, hogy alapvetően nem ez az, amire alapvetően hasonlít az ember egy füzetre, tehát akkor nyilván valami többet akar ennél mondani. A másik pedig, hogy szintén azt is mondja, hogy megtanuljuk az egész Tórát teljességében, kolátorákuló, hogy az ugye kétszer van benne az, hogy az egészet teljesen, és hogy akkor mi az, hogy az egészet teljesen, hogy ez nem csak ebben az esetben kérdés, hanem nagyon sok más helyen is kérdés, ahol szintén ez van említve, hogy az egészet teljesen, és hogy kolhaulam kuló eserszámra, hogy az egész világ, az is egész és teljesen, ott is kétszer van említve, és hogy ez alapvetően azt jelenti, hogy ha valami, tehát mondjuk zsidóságban valami nem egész, hanem csak többség, már azt is úgy számítjuk, mint egész. Például ilyen kósersági dolgokban, hogy többsége kóser, esetleg beleesik valami, az még attól nem teljesen rontja el. Tehát azt jelenti, hogy az egészet teljesen, az azt jelenti, hogy most tényleg teljesen, és nem pedig csak annyi, hogy többségét. És akkor ebből azt tanulhatjuk, hogy az angyal megtanítja az anyamékben az egész Tórát teljességében, amiről viszont tudjuk, hogy lehetetlen, mert a Tóra teljességében az nem csak annyi a Mózes 5 könyv, mint felsorolta hosszan-hosszan az egész zsidó történelem során, az összes nagy rabbit, amit most nem fogok elismételni, de Tanaim, Amoraim, Geonim, Rishonim, Achronim, és mostani rabbit. És akkor kérdezte a Hopészheimnak az egyik fontos, legfőbb tanítványa, a Rabbi Menachem Nissel a tanárát, hogy mostan, hogyha mindezt összeadjuk, amit az eddig a zsidóság a Tóráról tanult, akkor tulajdonképpen mennyit sikerült megértenünk akkor ebből a Tórából? Az mondja, mint egy cseppet a tengerből, és kiveszed a cseppet, és az egész, a tenger az tele marad. Tehát akkor ennyit tanult meg a zsidóság az eddigi történelme során Tórából úgy, hogy amikor bemegyünk egy zsinagógába, akkor látjuk tele könyves polcot, teleírva apró betűkkel, és ez még csak egy töredéke a zsidó könyvtárnak. Akkor mit jelent az, hogy megtanulta az egész Tórát az anyamékben? És a harmadik kérdés, amit föltett, az... Ja igen, hogy miért kell, hogy meg kell esküdnie, mielőtt megszületik, hogy cádik lesz és nem rásá, ami egyszerű fordításban annyit jelent, hogy igaz ember és nem lesz gonosz, de ő úgy fordította alternatív módon, hogy betölti a potenciáját teljesen vagy sem, és megtartja a Tórát. És akkor erre kérdezi, hát ezt a Nedarimban tanultuk, hogy egy ilyen dolog nincsen, mert hogy azt tanultuk, hogy egyszerre egy dologra egyet lehet esküdni. És ha már egyet valaki megesküdött, akkor arra még egyet esküszik, akkor ha megszegi, akkor nem két esküt szeg meg, hanem csak egyet. És éppen ezért, hogyha egyszer már a Szináj hegyénél megesküdtünk arról, hogy be fogjuk tartani a Tórát, a Szináj hegyénél megesküdtünk, hogy be fogjuk tartani a Tórát, akkor most már az nem számít semmit, hogy most mit esküszünk erről. Akkor mit számít ez az eskü, amit az angyal esket? Lényegében tartalmilag ugyanaz, akkor fölösleges eskü. Hogyha azt kell imádkozni, és megesküszöm, hogy holnap meg imádkozni, az semmi. Ha megesküszöm, hogy holnap nagyon jól fogok imádkozni, az már valami, mert akkor már arra esküdtem, amire még már nem esküdtem meg korábban.
All three questions can be answered with one big, very, very powerful idea. And this idea, I heard it from my teacher from many, many years ago. His name was Rabbi Moshe Aaron Stern, who heard it directly from a person that saw this event I'm going to describe to you. He saw it with his own eyes. What was the story? The story goes that once upon a time, the Chafetz Chaim. Now, for those who have not heard of the Chafetz Chaim, he was arguably the greatest rabbi of the last century. He was a great Torah student, but he was famous for his love of the Jewish people. Tremendous, tremendous feeling for everyone that was poor, anyone that needed help. And during World War I, there was a period where he had to run away from Radin, from his hometown, and he spent some time in a town called Simyatit. And here in Simyatit, he saw that the people were suffering tremendously from World War I. And there was literal hunger going on. There were people that had no food. And the rich part of the Jewish community, when I say rich, I mean relatively rich, the people that had food and could take care of themselves, were in a much, much better place than the poorer people where the children were going hungry. So the Chafetz Chaim says to his wife and to his children, we need to do action. And this is what he did. Every Friday morning, or maybe Thursday afternoon, he would go from house to house, the people that had money and people that had food, and he would gather together all kinds of food from their houses. He would go with bags, and one person would provide vegetables, next person would provide meat, next person would provide what do we have over here? The Hungarian goulash. That was whatever it is, all kinds of things that are good for your cholesterol, and all kinds of things from place to place until eventually he had a few cartons of food. Then he would go over to the poor people and he would start distributing. And by Shabbos came in, the poor people had at least what to eat for Shabbos, plus leftovers that would keep them going for the next part of the week. And this was classic Chafetz Chaim, caring about people, not just talking about it, but action. This is what he was doing. And then the war slowly but surely came to an end, or he needed to come back. I don't remember the details of the story. He needed to go back to Radin, and it was safe to go back home. And he announces on Thursday that next Sunday I'm going back home, and this is my last Shabbos in the town. So Thursday night, a delegation of poor people come, literally with tears in their eyes, and they're crying to the Chafetz Chaim, you don't understand how this town works. When you leave, nobody is going to take care of us. There's no one here that's going to fill your place. And we're begging you not to leave. We need you here. Rabbi, we need you here. Take care of us. Please stay. And the Chafetz Chaim is crying because he wants to go home. He loves these people. He cares about them. He says, I'm going to pray to God and ask for a miracle. Something should work out. I'm going to try my best to make sure that you're taken care of. Okay, the next day, the Chafetz Chaim is going with his entourage, with the students and people. They're going to the synagogue for the Friday night meal. And as he's going, suddenly coming towards him is the scariest man in the town. Who was this person? This person was the commissar. In other words, I don't know the exact date of the story, but it was after the Communist Revolution. And Simyatit had its communist representative. He was a man, he was famous for his sadism. This person was a very cruel person, a very vicious person, and everyone was scared of him. And if you looked at him the wrong way, you know what I mean? Okay, off to Siberia with you. And that's if you were lucky, you know what I mean? If you were really, really bad, he would force you to eat the food. I mean, he'd force you to eat he would terrible things. He would do terrible things to you. And he's walking with his Talmid in the Chafetz Chaim, and the other side, din. You see, the commandant is coming with his soldiers, and everyone's scared. And then came a special moment. It's a moment when the Chafetz Chaim's holy eyes and the evil eyes of this commissar, commandant, whatever it was, their eyes met. Their eyes met. And then the Chafetz Chaim did something very, very strange. He said loud and clearly to the commissar, Good Shabbos, Herr Kommissar. The commissar was not prepared for this line, and without thinking, he said, Good Shabbos, Herr Rabbina. Good Shabbos, Rabbi. And everyone gasps for air. And everyone says, what is going on over here? And people think maybe they're on candid camera. And they have that here, thank God. Okay. And in the distance, a dog barks. Oh. And there's silence. And then suddenly, I made that part up. Yeah, of course, obviously, I have no idea if the dog barked. But the Chafetz Chaim says to the commissar, tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow is my last day in the city. If you would honor me to join me for the third meal of the Sabbath, it would be a tremendous, tremendous honor for me. Chafetz Chaim took a risk, and the risk was successful. What did the Chafetz Chaim know that no one else knew? There was, in history, a very sad story called the Nikolai Soldaten. Nikolai Soldaten means the soldiers of Nicholas the Tsar. He used to take little children, Jewish children, 5, 6, 7 years old, take them from their parents, and put them into the army for 25 years. It's very, very hard to imagine how cruel this was and how devastating it was for the parents. Some of us over here have little children, so just the thought of a child being taken away from you. And that was it. When you hear stories with the Hasidic rabbis about somebody comes into the synagogue and they only know the Aleph base, so they only know how to whistle. All these stories are these soldiers that were taken away by the Russian army. And true enough, the Chafetz Chaim correctly figured out that this commandant was actually a Jew. And he had forgotten his Judaism, and it's been years and years and years and years and years, and somehow or other he developed a very cruel nature but it wasn't him. He was actually a Jewish child that was taken away from his parents. Shabbos afternoon, knock on the door. Commandant wants to meet with the rabbi. He comes in, and the Chafetz Chaim invites him into the room, and everyone else is asked to leave. So it's interesting because I'm British and I'm cynical. So when Moshe Aaron Stern told the story, I said to him, Rabbi, how do we know the story is going to be true? Because if it was a Hasidic story, I wouldn't worry. Because Hasidic story is always one Chassid under the table, one under the chandeliers, one behind the curtain. It's always, we can figure these things out somehow or other. This is not a Hasidic, it's a literature story. Literature stories, you know what I mean? There's no miracles and no happy endings, all right? This is what happens with our stories. So I asked the same question, and he said, and Stern said to me, I had the same problem. And the person that told me the story said to me, I'll tell you what happened. The door was left open, a little bit open, just a few inches open, and there were like 4 or 5 pairs of ears trying to listen to the conversation, and I was one of those people that heard what happened next. So what happened next? So, all the young single men over here, we all try hard to get the best pickup lines, right? The opening line is crucial. You got to get that first line right. Yeah, Ernest? You got to get in there. So don't use this line. Don't use this line unless you're trying to get one of the madrichot. Okay? You have to say, he said, I want to tell you about Torah. I want to tell you about Torah. So the commissar was very offended. He says, I don't even remember the Aleph base anymore. So you're telling me about Torah, like it's insulting for me. I don't know Torah anymore. He says, no. I know that you're an intelligent man. You're a very successful person. I'm going to tell you about Torah that you will understand perfectly in your language, and you're going to enjoy it. Go for it, Rabbi. The Chafetz Chaim asked the following question. In the book of Genesis, describing the creation of the world, man, Adam and Eve, was placed in the Garden of Eden. Last night we learned the Garden of Eden is not a magical place. It's right here. It's right over here. This is the original prototype of what the world to come is going to look like. And the Talmud said, the Torah says, that the Garden of Eden had, and I quote, Eitz Hachaim Besoch Hagan. Eitz Hachaim, a tree of life, Besoch. The word Besoch is an extra word. Besoch means in the midst of the garden. It could have said Eitz Hachaim Bagan, but it says Eitz Hachaim Besoch Hagan. And Rashi asks, what do you need the extra word Besoch? And he answers that you should know that the tree of life, Besoch, was Be'emtza Hagan, in the middle of the garden. Great. Now we know the position of the Eitz Hachaim. It was in the middle of the garden. So the Chafetz Chaim asked a very simple question. Who cares? Who cares where it is? Let it be, South Central. Let it be the west side. Let it be in the north. Let it be, Let it be on the Buddha River. It can be wherever you want. Okay, what does it matter where the Eitz Hachaim is? So the commissar says, it's a good question. Who cares where it was? Why does it have to be in the middle of the garden? Says the Holy Chafetz Chaim, a beautiful, beautiful answer. And this is the whole reason why I flew from Israel. Just to be able to give you this beautiful answer, which is going to answer all our questions, and it's going to make us think a little bit. As you look around this room, and every single person in this room is unique and special. How do I know? We all look different. That's God's way of reminding us that not just we look different, because we are different. Take a moment, look at the person next to you. Notice how different he or she looks to you. Secretly, you can think to yourself, thank God. But, but the person next to you looks different from you. Why? Because every person has a story to tell that is unique and special. Every person has their own special story to tell. So what did God do? God put the tree of life in the middle of the garden. And every person forms a circle around the tree of life. Now, if you are on the circle, it means you take up space on the circle. Mathematicians will prove this to you, that if you're on a circle and you all want to get to the Eitz Hachaim, to the tree of life, so every person has to have their own path to the middle of the garden. Again, what is the tree of life? The tree of life is everything a person wants in life. Tree of life means, in physical terms, it means that your life flourishes, that you're successful. The tree of life is the secret to living forever, a place where there's no death. The tree of life refers also to the Torah, the Holy Torah. The tree of life refers to the world of to come, where there's no death and no suffering and no sadness. Everything that a person wants in life is symbolized by the tree of life. Your journey to the tree of life is your own journey, because if you take up space on the circle around it, you have a circle and a tree in the middle, and you're going in, you have to blaze your own trail. Every person has their own journey into the center over here. So this, says the Chafetz Chaim, is the explanation of what it means that the tree of life is in the middle, to tell us, don't try and live somebody else's life. You got to have your own life, and you got to get to your center of the garden, and you got to get there your way, and you have to ask yourself, what am I all about? What makes my life special? What makes me different? What makes me unique? And then you have to figure out how to get into the middle of the garden. So the Kamarsal looks at him and says, it's beautiful. What's that got to do with me? And the Chafetz Chaim looks into his eyes and says to him, do you think by chance that one of the jobs that you have as the Kamarsar is that you're in charge of the food distribution of the city? You think it's by chance? It's not by chance. God wants you to do something that is beautiful. You can take care of the poor people. I mean, you're a communist, for goodness sake. I don't know if he said that, but he said, you should take care of the poor people over here. So the Kamarsar looks at him and says, are you asking me to do something kind and generous to other people in the town? Chafetz Chaim says, this is what I want you to do. So this is how I heard the story from Rav Moshe Aaron Stern. He says the Chafetz Chaim put out his hand, and the Kamarsar took that hand, and he held it for a long, long time. And the Kamarsar, with tears in his eyes, said to him, Rabbi, I will take care of the poor people in this city. And that's how the story ends. It's a beautiful story, but the message is incredibly important. And before I tell you the message, let's have a quick translation in Hungarian.
Egy történet, amit egyik rabbiától, az a Moshe Aaron Stern, aki ezt első kézből hallotta ezt a történetet, aki a Chafetz Chaim ugye nem annyira régen élt, előző évszázadban egy nagyon nagy rabbi volt, és ez vele történt meg, aki nem csak, hogy ő volt az egyik, hát a legnagyobb rabbi volt a saját nemzedékében, leghíresebb és legtúratudós, hanem emellett arról volt híres, hogy mennyire törődik az emberekkel, hogy mennyire odafigyel rájuk, és érzékenyen érinti őt az, hogyha valami bajuk van, és éppenséggel, amikor ő élt Radinban, de amikor az első világháború kitört, nem tudott ott maradni, és el kellett utazni egy másik kis városba, ahol nagyon súlyos következményei voltak az első világháborúnak, ugyanis olyan szegények voltak az emberek, hogy nem volt mit enniük, és voltak szegények és a gazdagok azok nem úgy voltak gazdagok, mint itt most, hanem hogy nekik volt mit enniük, és a szegényeknek nem volt mit enniük. És a Chafetz Chaim akkor mit csinált? Ami őnek a legtermészetesebb dolog volt a világon, mikor kiment a szombat, akkor körülbement egy zsákkal, és a feleségével, és összegyűjtötték a maradék ételeket a gazdag családokból a maradt étel, és azt szétosztották a szegények között, és a szegényeknek volt mit enniük. És a háború lassan a végéhez közeledett, és már a Chafetz Chaim mondta, hogy most el fog menni vissza, ahol ő lakik, és a szegények oda voltak sírva, hogy ne menjen, mert nem tudnának nélküle mit élni, nem tudnának mit enni, és a gyerekeik éheznek. És akkor mondta, hogy jól van, akkor fogok imádkozni, és meg fogom próbálni a tőlem telhetőt, hogy valakit küldjön az örökkével, aki tudna törődni veletek. És akkor történt ez Sábeszkor, hogy a Chafetz Chaim sétált az utcán a tanulóival, és szemben jött velük a városnak a megbízott vezetője, az akkor éppen ilyen kommunizmus volt, és ez a megbízott vezető, ez nagyon híres volt a kegyetlenségéről. Hogy ha valaki csak egy rosszat pillant rá, akkor valami szörnyű büntetéseket, és valami nagyon kegyetlen bánásmódban részesíti őket. És egy olyan feszült helyzet volt, hogy ők jöttek szembe a Chafetz Chaim és körülötte az ő tanítványi, és ez az ember, és az ő katonái, és találkozott a szemük, és mondta neki a Chafetz Chaim, hogy Git Sábáton szerkomisszár. És mondta neki, hirtelen meglepődött nagyon a vezető, és mondta, hogy Git Sábáton rabbiner, ugye. A főrabbi úrnak is Git Sábáton, és azt nem tudták az ottani lakosok, és csak a Hofész Haim tudta, ugye, hogy volt ez Oroszországban, elfelejtettem a nevét, ez a rendszer, amiben tudom, volt ennek van egy magyar neve is. Kantonista, köszönöm. Hogy elvitték a zsidó gyerekeket, amíg még nagyon kicsik voltak, és akiknek itt van kisgyerekek, azok tudják, hogy az micsoda egy érzés lehet. Amikor még a gyerek nem tud semmit, és teljesen agymosásnak verik alá, és beépítik az orosz hadseregbe, és a saját céljakra használják. Ez nagyon kegyetlen dolog volt. És a Hofész Haim tudta, hogy valószínűleg ez az ember is zsidó volt, és kisgyerekként elvitték, és idővel kialakított magában kifele egy ilyen állarcot. És akkor mondta, hogy mindent föltett egy lapra, és rizikózott, hogy jöjjön el hozzám a herr komisszár egy sálesüdeszre. És akkor csodák csodája, el is jött, és mindenkit kiküldtek, csak az ajtót résnyire nyitva hagyták, és hallgatóztak, és úgy tudják elmesélni ezt a mesét. Hogy mit beszélgetnek, mondta a Hofész Haim, hogy szeretném mondani egy kis tóra magyarázatot, és mondta az ember, hogy ne akarjon engem megszégyeníteni a rabbi úr, mert én tudja, hogy én korán eljöttem, és a alef-bészt se tudom, és nem fogom érteni. Mondta, te nagyon intelligens ember vagy, és nagyon jól csinálod a karrieredet, és te fogod érteni, és egy egyszerű nyelven le fogom mondani. Volt, amikor volt a teremtés, és leírja az édenkertet, és a kert közepén volt a Haim, és tanultuk ugye tegnap este, hogy az édenkert az megfelel a eljövendő világnak, ami itt lesz, és ez a fa pedig megfelel minden jónak, ami lesz, tehát minden célnak, amit az ember el akarhat érni, és akkor azt mondja, hogy ez a fa, ez volt az édenkert közepén. És akkor az a kérdés, hogy miért érdekes, hogy a közepén volt, mi lett volna, hogyha a szélén van, és akkor azt a választ adja erre a Hofész Haim, hogy az, hogy a közepén van, az azt jelenti, hogy mindenkinek, aki körben van a körvonalon áll, annak, hogy eljusson a kör közepére, az egyedi saját útját kell megtennie. Míg gondolom, hogyha a szélén lenne, akkor lehet, hogy nagyon hasonló utakat járnának be, ezt a részt annyira nem értettem. De hogy, mivel hogy ez mutatja, hogy igazából senki nem élheti a másiknak az életét. És akkor mondta, hogy oké, és ez mi köze van hozzám ennek a történetnek? Az, hogy nem véletlen az, hogy az örökkévaló azt akarta, hogy te legyél ennek a városnak a vezetője. És te gondoskodsz a város élelmiszerellátásáról, mert óriási micve lehetőséget adott neked. Az örökkévaló, te gondoskodhatsz a szegény emberekről. És akkor mondta, hogy azt akarod, hogy én csinálok egy kedves dolgot, egy jótékony dolgot, és viselkedjek rendesen? És mondta, igen, azt akarom. És akkor nyújtotta a kezét, és akkor hosszan kezet fogtak, és megígérte neki.
Remember this, ladies and gentlemen? This is what you look like in your mother's womb. The Chofetz Chaim, the Maharal of Prague wants to know what on earth is going on over here. Is your head, is your feet, this is your body over here. Says the Maharal of Prague something very powerful. He says, what is an accountant's ledger? You've got your credits, you've got your debits, you've got your numbers here and thing. It's basically an account of every small detail of the company, of whatever you're trying to run. Says the Chofetz Chaim, the rabbis with their genius describes the very first imagery of a human being that your life is accountable, which means there's no such thing as a moment where you don't have to explain and understand why you're doing what you're doing. Because this is what happened in your mother's womb. You learned Kol HaTorah Kula. What does Kol HaTorah Kula mean? Kol HaTorah means you didn't learn the whole Torah in its entirety. You're not God. You're not Moses. You learned your Kol HaTorah Kula. You learned your story. You learned what you are supposed to do here in this world, what makes you unique and what makes you special. You're supposed to bring out your essence into this world. Every Jew is accountable. Every Jew is a soldier in God's army, and you're coming here with a mission. So what does the angel do? The angel teaches you who you are, what you're capable of doing. Maral doesn't say this, but the way that I always like to say it over. Your life is like climbing a ladder. When you climb a ladder, the goal is to get to the top. And you've got to figure out what is your personal next rung. And if you're not climbing, you're going to fall. And every person's job in this world is to get to the top of their ladder. Little by little, bit by bit. And you constantly have to reassess yourself and ask yourself, am I focused on my mission in life? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? That's why. Remember what the angel said to us before we left our mother's womb, before we left our first universe and entered into our second universe. Make an oath. What kind of an oath is this? I already made an oath at Mount Sinai to keep the whole Torah. No, Senor, you do not understand. That oath was the Jewish people together. That oath was everyone together, hand by hand. Ki ish echad, b'lev echad, with one heart and one hand. We were together. We accepted the Torah as a nation. The nation has a mission in this world. But now we're talking about you. Because you were born twice, and we spoke about this last night. You were born with Abraham and the Jewish people, and you go all the way to the Melech HaMashiach, to the Messiah. But you're also born at a unique moment in time. When you were born, nobody else was born at that moment. Except statistically someone in China. But besides that, that moment was your moment. You come into this world, you got your mission. And Hashem gives you all the tools for your mission. So don't ask yourself, why do I have these parents? You know, some of us had difficult homes. I'm sorry. Your difficult home was exactly what you needed to become you. Some of you don't like what you see in the mirror. That's just tough. You are exactly the way you're supposed to look. Some people are smarter than others. Some people are cleverer. Some people are funnier. Some people are more artistic and creative. Everyone has their strengths and everyone has their weaknesses. And that's the package that you got. No one asked your advice when it was decided what moment in history you were born. It's not an easy time to be alive. This is the end of history. We spoke about this when we spoke about Ishmael. We are now the last wars, the ending. Hashem is bringing history to a close. That's when we're supposed to be here. No one asks where you should be born. There's a reason why you were born in Budapest. Because I think everyone in this room, it's kind of easy to figure out that you guys have a mission to do. Because look at you. You're the ones that are holding the banner of a famous community of hundreds and hundreds of years of glorious history. And you people are proud to be Jewish. Well, guess what? You got a lot of brothers and sisters out there that don't know a thing. Just to be able to teach them, like we said last night, the Shema. They can't even say the 6 words of the Shema. Well, people like you can invite people and talk to people and be friendly with people and show how beautiful and wonderful our religion is. Don't ask any of these questions. Just look at yourself and say, who am I? What did the angel teach me in my mother's womb? And then go out there and you have to become that person you're supposed to be. That's what it means. You make an oath to be a tzaddik, meaning be your tzaddik. The word tzaddik comes from the word tzedek. Justify your life. Live the life that you're supposed to be. And with that, the angel sends you out there, and with that, you're out there on your mission. So the bottom line is, all these 3 questions have been answered with one big idea. The folded accountant's ledger is nothing more than a symbol of the first image of who you are. Your life is accountable. You study your Torah. The angel shows you your life. Every situation, every scenario, if bad things happen, if good things happen, as you go through your different years, the scenarios that you go through, the malach, the angel, teaches you everything. And then when you leave your mother's womb, you're given this challenge, is you got to be you. You got to find that special person that makes you into you. That is the challenge that the Chafetz Chaim is teaching us, and that is the answer to these 3 questions.
És akkor most a Chafetz Chaim, amit mondott, ezt a magyarázatot, hogy a kert közepén volt a fa, ennek segítségével lehet megválaszolni, hogy ezt a 3 kérdést, amit mondott. Az első kérdés, hogy miért hasonlítunk egy ilyen összehajtott elszámolási könyvecskére. Ez az elszámolási könyv azért, mert el kell számolnunk az életünkkel, tehát ami ebben van, hát ebbe íródik föl minden szal. Ők adtak egy képet arról, hogy ebben, amit csinálunk, azok fel lesznek jegyezve, és ezek számon kérhetőek rajtunk, és ez konkrétan rólunk fog szólni. És itt kezdődik ugye az a kép, hogy az egyéniségnek az útjának a megjelenése. És ez magyarázza azt is, hogy mi az, hogy az egész Tórát megtanítja, az nem azt jelenti, hogy az egész Tórát, amit a örökkévaló ismer, vagy a Mózes ismer, hanem azt, amit nekem személy szerint meg kell ismernem az életem során. Amit nekem meg kell ismernem, azt már ott megismerem az anyamében. És a harmadik, hogy legyél jó, és ne legyél rossz, az...
Ami benned van, azt kell kihozni.
Igen.
You thought you were off. You're not working, you're working.
és akik itt ülnek, azoknak még pedig mindenki tudja, vagyis hogy hát kell tudni, hogy mindenkinek van egy az oka, hogy miért pont itt van, és miért pont úgy néz ki, és miért pont arra képel, és miért pont ott született, miért pont Budapesten él, egy olyan közösségben, amelyiknek ugye volt egy nagy múltja, és most is nagyon sokan élnek a mi környezetünkben olyanok, akik nem is tudják esetleg mondani akár annyit, hogy Smá Iszrael, és hogy akár nekik is, hogy mi tartjuk kvázi a zászlót, és mi büszkék vagyunk arra, hogy zsidók vagyunk, és ez egy olyan dolog, ami valószínű, hogyha pont itt vagyunk, és ebben a szituációban, akkor ez hát utalás arra, hogy akkor ezeket a dolgokat mi meg is tehetjük. Akár.
I want to share with you a midrash that I personally find very scary. This always scares me. The midrash describes what happens the moment that you die. After 120 years in this world, what happens next? It says you go up to heaven, and there you meet what's called the heavenly tribunal. There's an angel that greets you. And this angel is not your friendly, cuddly angel that you had in your mother's womb. This is a scary-looking angel. And the angel, I imagine he probably speaks with a German accent, and he says, he asks you a very, very simple question. What is your name? Okay, you want to get into heaven, you got to answer a simple question. What's your name? Well, that's an easy one. That's an easy one. So Gabor says, my name is Gabor. The angel looks at him, Nein! What is your name? Okay? So Gabor says, oh my gosh, what do you want from me? It's Gabor. And he starts screaming, what is your name? What is he asking when he asks you for your name? Some of you were in my music class 2 days ago, and you should answer this question. What does it mean when he's asking, what is your name?
To fulfill your mission, what you should do.
Excellent, okay? So exactly. Your name is your essence. Your name is the story that the angel taught you in your mother's womb. Now, it happens to be, there's one version of this medrash that says that the angel in your womb actually is brought out as testimony to give evidence that he taught you your name. Hola, señorita, it's me again, okay? I come back to see you, okay? That angel comes out, and he's giving testimony and saying everything that makes you into who you are. At that point then, Gabor has a problem over here. Okay, he can't say, I worked in a toy store. I don't care what you did for a living. That's not what your mission was. What did you do? What did you affect? What did you change? What did you do in this world? I just want you to know that it gets scarier. Because if you think that if you answer what your name correctly, that you get right in, you missed out part of the story. Every single Jew has what's called a letter in God's Torah. In other words, there is, according to our tradition, 600,000 mystical letters in God's Sefer Torah. Now, exactly how this works is not for now. There's all kinds of different theories, because we know today there's only a little bit over 300,000 letters in the Torah, but there's different ways of counting. It doesn't make any difference. We always have a concept called every single person comes back in different lives, and all kinds of things that make this complicated. It doesn't make any difference. In practice, you are a letter in God's Sefer Torah. What happens if a letter is missing in a Sefer Torah?
Then it's not kosher.
The whole thing is not kosher. Well, that's getting scary now. now it's getting serious. Not only if you mess up your story, you've also messed it up for everybody else. Because the Jewish people are a nation that are interconnected. So if you mess up, then everything else is messed up. So your responsibility is not just to become you, it's to become you with everybody else becoming them. Because only together can we make this perfected Sefer Torah called God's Sefer Torah. I once said this over in the yeshiva that I taught. And a boy came out and he was shaking all over. It's a true story. He said, Rabbi Nissel, please don't tell me this is true, because I cannot be a letter in the Sefer Torah. He says, why can't you be a letter in the Sefer Torah? He said, because Rabbi, you don't know what I've done. Now I just looked at this person. He was an incredibly good-looking man. He looked like a football player. The kind of male that ladies are interested in. You know what I mean? I don't know how to say this nicely. Okay? He had abs, you know what I mean? Pectoral muscles. Not like us rabbis. You know what I mean? Like he was the real thing. He was a person. So he started telling me all the things that he does. And I felt like, like a priest. I closed my tongue. Yes, my child, okay? Confess your sins to me. It was the whole thing was very uncomfortable. And he said to me, I cannot have a letter in the Sefer Torah, it just can't be me. I said to him, my child, relax. You too have a letter in the Sefer Torah. He says, me, I have a letter? I said, yeah. You're probably in Parshas Achrimos at the end. There's a whole section that talks about all kinds of sexual sins that a person's not allowed to do. You're probably in there somewhere. He said, oh, thank you, Rabbi, that's so beautiful. Okay. Go for it.
I thought it's not the end of this. Van egy midrás, egy nagyon félelmetes és ijesztő, hogy mikor az ember a végső elszámolás van, akkor nem olyan kedves angyallal találkozik, amilyennel találkozott anyám még úgy képzelem, mint a Puerto Ricóból innen spanyolul beszélne. Kedvesen.
You have to do the German accent.
Hanem németül. És szigorúan. És azt kérdezi, hogy mi a neved. És amikor erre az ember a nevét mondja, az nem felel meg neki, mert tanultuk tegnap előtt, hogy a neved az valójában azt jelenti, hogy beteljesítetted-e azt, amiért mentél, és akkor megint megjelenik az a bizonyos spanyol angyal, aki tanította azt, hogy miért mész, hogy mi a te feladatod az életben, és hogy na most akkor azzal mi lett, és ez a kérdés, és ez egy igazán kellemetlen gondolat, mert hogy ha ez nem fog sikerülni, az nem lesz jó, és főleg, hogyha még azt is hozzávesszük ehhez, hogy egy másik midrás, másik magyarázat szerint minden embernek, minden zsidónak kell lenni egy betűnek, az örökkévalónak a tóratekercsében, csak az a baj, hogyha esetleg van egy tóratekercsében az egyik betű, az nem jó, akkor az egész az alkalmatlan, tehát ezért nagyon fontos, hogy az ember ténylegesen tudja teljesíteni ezt a küldetését, mert hogyha nem, akkor hiányzik egy betű, tehát ettől lesz ez az egész annyira félelmetes, és amikor ezt a történetet elmondta a diákjainak, akkor utána megjelent egy diák azzal, hogy ez nem jó, hogy ez ugye biztos nem így van, mert ő nem tudna lenni egy betű ebben a Tóra tekercsben, mert ő olyan dolgokat csinált, és akkor elkezdte mondani, és úgy érezte magát a rabbi, mint egy gyóntató pap, akinek ezeket végig kell hallgatni, és akkor mondta, hogy de te tulajdonképpen lehetsz egy betű az örökkévalónak a Tóra tekercsében, mert vannak azok a részek a Tórában, amik ezekről a fajta bűnökről szólnak, és ott simán lehetsz még
Now we come to the problem. And this is the most serious part of my presentation, because this is a problem that you and I have to struggle with continuously. What is the problem? The problem is that life is very, very distracting from our mission. You wake up in the morning, first thing you have to do is take care of your body. It's the way it is. You go to the bathroom, you have to have breakfast, you have to look after yourself. After that, you have to go to work. When people have to go to work, we have to make an honest day's living. And we live in a society that your work is considered the most important thing of your life. So, I don't know if it's the same in Hungary. I imagine it's the same in Hungary. In England and America, you ask somebody, what do you do? And your answer with your career. And if you have a good career, you feel prestigious. And if you have a, an embarrassing career, so you feel like a little bit that you're only half a human being. And then afterwards you come home and you got to take care of things. You have to cook, you have to do laundry, you have to look after things, you have to do homework with the children. And life sucks you in. And days go by, and weeks go by, and months go by, and we forget to ask ourselves the most important question that we need to ask ourselves all the time, which is basically 3 words. Who am I? What am I all about? In other words, after you've done everything that you have to do, and again, it could be that you also have to take care of your children. Sometimes, last 10 years, I had to take care of my father. And sometimes there's all kinds of important things that you do in the different concentric circles of our lives. But then in the middle, you got to stop and think that what makes me different from everyone else? Everyone's getting up, everyone's taking care, eating, everyone's going to work, everyone's coming home taking care of their children. What makes me different from an animal, from my fellow cow? Okay, so are we different from that? They also get up in the morning, they also go to work, they go to the field. They also have families, they also have a sense of humor. This is it. So what exactly is it that, according to the far side, they do? And what exactly makes them unique and special and different? That makes you, what makes you special and different? What was your message? My Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Wolbe, I have 2 Rebbeim that changed my life. One we spoke about a lot was Reb Moshe Shapiro, but a blessed memory, Reb Shlomo Wolbe used to say that every single person in this room, meaning every person who is passionate about themselves and being Jewish, needs to find time to stop and think about their lives. It is important, says Rav Wolbe, to be on your own. It is important. He used to force us. It was a crazy thing to go for walks on our own in the forest. Now I don't know if this story is true, but I heard the story that once, when he was in the yeshiva in Ber Yaakov, he once sent the boys out to go for walks on their own to think about their lives. And a boy came back after about 5 or 6 minutes. And Rav Wolbe says, how come you set your back so quickly? And he saw he was shaking all over. He says, nothing, Rabbi. Nothing happened. He says, no, I can see from your face. You saw someone. He says, no, I didn't see anyone. And Rav Wolbe says, you saw someone. And Rav Wolbe was a gentle person, and he started shouting. He took him and says, you saw someone. He says, no, Rebbe. Who could I have possibly seen? And he said, you saw yourself. That's why you're shaking. This is an interesting thing, because when you start to think about your life and start to think about the real you, the inner you, the hidden you, the one that no one gets to see, so sometimes we realize we're just going through life, doing what everyone else is doing, just making ends meet, always worried about careers, always what people are thinking about us, and not really analyzing our own uniqueness, what makes us special, what we're supposed to do. I taught in a seminary in Jerusalem in Beit Vegan. And there I told the girls, okay, between next week I want you to come back. Each one of you has to walk around Beit Vegan once, on your own, and think about what makes you unique and special. A week later I came back and a girl said to me that Rabbi did it and nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I'm not Rav Wolbe, but I asked her, did you really go on your own? I said, yeah, I went on my own. Me, myself, I, and my headphones. I said, you idiot. You missed the whole point, okay? That's what we do. We go into the car, put the music on, put something on, put the radio on. We don't want to think. We don't want to think about ourselves. It happens to be that the little bit I spoke over here, you guys get it. I know a few of you told me you like to go on vacations on your own. You understand the benefits of aloneness. But aloneness has to be a moment where you get in touch with the inner you and you reconnect to the world of the womb and you find out what is your story and are you doing what you're supposed to be doing. Every person has something unique and special about them, and that's what they're supposed to be doing in this world. Once all the noise and busyness has been taken away, you've got to bring out your own unique story. Just want to share with you one little thing. It's going to be a little controversial, so if you don't like what I'm about to say, press delete. Ignore it, okay? I work with American youth all the time. I go to America several times a year, and I talk for hours and hours with students from 16 to 18. That's the age group that I work with. I sit with them, talk to them, listen to their problems. In the last couple of years, I've had this again and again and again, that I talk to students who are gay. Excuse me for saying the expression, Rabbi, but these are people, they are attracted to their own gender. Now, they're coming to an Orthodox weekend, and they know that I accept everyone. I don't judge, and I think it's a terrible, terrible thing to judge a person. So the kids trust me. So one kid came up to me, and he said to me, Rabbi, what do I do? This is who I am, and I want to live a Torah lifestyle. I want to live a Torah lifestyle. Is there any way that it's going to work? I spoke to him for an hour, but I'm going to tell you in 10 seconds what I said to him. I said to him, you have to understand that a person's purpose in this life is not necessarily what the world expects from you. You go to school, they tell you, you got to make an impact. You got to get your name in print. You have to have achieved something. You have to discover something. You have to start the method, what's it called? What do we call it? The Hermuth method of teaching dance to special needs kids. I'm not knocking it. I think it's great, okay? You got to do yours. You got to, wrong. Sometimes the reason why a person is brought down to this world is Hashem gave you anger, and you have to control that anger. Hashem gave you lust, and you have to control your lust. Sometimes you put into this world, and you have there today, teenagers tell them that they're addicted to pornography. And then I tell them this is their challenge. It's like this could take a whole life to work on. People have things that they have to work on. Patience, to work on different things, to make them, to work on their inner self. I said, in your case, I can't speak on behalf of God. But I know that Hashem gave you an urge, and if you can hold back that urge, just if you can hold back the urge, because the only problem, there's not an intrinsic problem that you're attracted to your own gender. The Torah, when he says you can't act in it, which is a very, 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 very difficult thing for a person to do. If you don't act in it, so you become the Holy of Holies. And you came down for 120 years just to be able to achieve this thing of not acting on your urges. So when I came back to Israel, I sat in the car with my rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, who this weekend is dedicated to Moshe ben Rachel for Refuah Shalem, that he should be healthy. And I told him over this conversation I had with this young boy. And I wanted to know, did he approve of what I had said? Did he approve? I mean, did I say it okay? Was I sensitive? Did I say it the right way? Because it's a very delicate question. And he said to me, Menachem, you forgot to say something very important. I said, what did I forget to say? You forgot to tell him that he is the one that's going to bring the Mashiach. This person, if he holds himself, it's such a crazy difficult thing to do. It's so hard. And if you do that, 120 years, you just do that one thing, that's why Mashiach's going to come, because of what you just did. The point I'm trying to make is that these kind of things need time and thought, because tomorrow's Sunday, but Monday morning, everyone is in a rush. Everyone's in a rush, right? There were no time for anything. We're in a rush. Work, thing, noise, stuff like that. Here, in Lativ Sábáton, a little bit of quiet. You sing together, friends, enjoy good Hungarian cholesterol foods, okay? Everything's quiet, a little bit of time to stop and think about who am I, the bigger picture, what's going on, what's happening with my life. You gotta go, take back, wait a second, am I doing the right thing? Can I improve? Maybe I have to work on my relationship with my best friend, or with my wife, or with my children. Maybe I should be working on things. Maybe I'm not taking care of my parents properly. Maybe there are important things that I am supposed to be doing that no one else can do. Maybe I didn't notice that there's a certain person who's going through a difficult time, and I never went up to them and spoke to them. And sometimes you realize that no one else can do what you can do. You know, so as a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, somebody, and you should be going to them, and you're so busy and you forget to really focus and to look around and to think about the world that you're going through. The bottom line is, the Chafetz Chaim has taught us that this is the tremendous lesson from the Talmud about what happens in our womb. And the Midrash says what happens at the end of days, the journey that we have to take, so that when you stand in front of the angel, you must be able to look the angel in the eye. And when the angel says to you, what is your name? You say, my name is Gabor. My name is Gabriel Atzadik V'Atomim V'Hayasha. I lived the life that I was supposed to live in this world. And if we can all do that, then we have achieved the purpose of our lives, we have become that letter in that Sefer Torah, and with that, the world can become complete. It's not the end of the class. I still have to share with you 2 short stories. But first of all, yeah.
De a fő nehézség ezzel kapcsolatban, amit most megosztott velünk, az az, hogy olyan sok dolog van, amit kell az embernek csinálnia, csak ahhoz, hogy létezzen, hogy reggel föl kell kelnie, összekészülnie, el kell mennie dolgozni, és ez a sok dolgot, ezt mind kötelező csinálni, tehát kötelező dolgozni, és amikor kérdezik az embert, hogy te mit csinálsz, akkor erre azt szokták válaszolni, hogy hát a munkájukat, pedig az nem az, amit ők csinálnak, amit csinálnak, az, amit el kellene érniük. És ez, ami nehézé teszi nekünk azt, hogy folyamatosan megvan az állandó programunk, mi az, amit kell csinálni, és ezért nem is tudunk arra időt szakítani, és gondolunk, hogy és mi az, amiért lejöttünk a földre, és kik vagyunk mi, és mi a mi célunk, és mi az, amit csak mi tudunk megcsinálni. És ezért is van az, hogy a Shlomo Wolbe ezt a jesivájában így tanította a diákoknak, hogy igenis el kell menni egyedül, és sétálni kell az erdőben, és gondolkozni azon, hogy kik vagyunk. Egyszer, amikor jött vissza egy fiatal tanuló, egy 5-10 perc után, és remegett, és kérdezte, hogy kivel találkoztál, kit láttál. Senkivel nem találkoztam, de találkoztál magaddal. És azért remegsz. Mert hogy ez félelmetes tud lenni, amikor erre az ember így rájön, és igen. Amerikában.
A fiatalok.
Ja igen, Amerikában a fiatalokhoz megy, és ott is dolgozik, van egy megállapodása, és akinek ez a történet ez nem jó, az csak törölje ki a fejéből, mert ez egy vitatott és nehéz téma, de ott mindig hosszan beszélget a diákokkal, és a diákok megbíznak benne, és tudja, hogy ő nem ítélkezik, és kérdeznek tőle őszintén dolgokat, és megkérdezik, hogy mi a teendő akkor, hogyha ő szeretne tényleg vallásos életet élni, de nem tud, mert ő saját neméhez vonzódik. És akkor mi a teendő egy ilyen esetben, és akkor mondta, hogy az alapvető nagy tévedés, ami itt van, az az, hogy az ember azt hiszi, hogy ami az életének a célja, azt, amit kívülről a külső világ sugároz, hogy nagy dolgokat elérni, például híresnek lenni, vagy valami, mit tudom én, könyvet írni, vagy rákerülni a címlapokra, vagy kifejleszteni egy tudományos eljárást, és közben pedig az is lehet, hogy az örökkévaló pont azért küldött el minket erre a világra, hogy dolgozzunk akár csak egyetlen egy ponton, és ez az egyetlen egy pont, ez lehet akár a harag, és akár lehet az éppen a vágyakozások is. És hogyha ezt megcsinálta az ember, akkor kész, teljesítette a feladatát, és csak ezt kell csinálnia, ez viszont egy egész életnyi teendőt igényel, és hát ez most nagyon röviden mondta el, de igazából ezt hosszabban kifejtette, és amikor hazaérkezett, akkor megkérdezte a rabbiát, akinek a gyógyulásáért van most ez a Sábáton, legyen egészséges a Moshe ben Rachel, Moshe Shapiro, és ő kérdezte, hogy biztos, hogy jól mondta, és biztos, hogy nem volt valami rossz, amit mondott, és akkor mondta, hogy de, egy dolgot elfelejtettél, az, hogy ő lesz az, aki elhozza a messiást, hogyha tényleg képes lesz arra, hogy legyőzze, hogy így egy ilyen nagyon nagy kihívásnak megfeleljen.
Okay. Just 2 stories and then I conclude. The first story is something that I feel very emotionally attached to. My father, he passed away a year and a half ago. My father lived in a town called Arad in Transylvania, but he was emotionally and culturally a Hungarian. How do I know? Because when him and his brothers get together, they always first started to speak in English, and then afterwards, when they got excited, they turned into Yiddish. And by the end, when they got really excited, they started speaking Hungarian. And this is like they were Hungarians in their blood, just their personality over here. So I know all the Igen and Servus and all the thing, I got it all from my home. But my father never spoke about himself in the war. And if I had time, maybe later this evening, I have a few incredible stories to share that I learned very recently about my father. But my father, not because he was modest. He did not talk about himself and what went on in his life. He didn't share stories over here. So I started to research his life. A lot of interesting things came out, especially during the war years. And then I started looking for books about people that lived like my father lived. I wanted to get a picture of what he was like when he was young. I so much wanted to know more. And I found a story about a young man. His name was Meir Kahan. Not Meir Kahana, Meir Kahan, okay? And he was a boy that lived in a village near Arad. It happened to be. And I was reading the story of his life, and I realized he had a lot in common with my father. The same age, born in the same period. My father worked in the labor camp. He started off in the labor camp, but he ended up working in a Jewish Hungarian battalion during the war. So the beginning of the war, as you all know, the Hungarians he had Hungarian pride, the whole thing. During the war, he was working for this army, and they were fighting the Allies. But he was nationalistic, he was proud, but he grew up like my father did, in a strong Hasidic, not really Hasidic, but the way it was, the Hasidic Ashkenaz, very, very, very religious home, very good, powerful home. And then the following situation occurred. And this for me is, again, in the last year and a half, I read a lot of books about the Holocaust and what went on in Hungary. This is the one story that I think is the most powerful. For me, many of the Holocaust stories follow a pattern. So after a while, you feel like, you know what I mean, this happened, that happened, this happened. It's like throwing a 6 and another 6, and then by chance I survived. But this story had a twist, and I want to share it with you. This Hungarian battalion were all Jews. And the Germans, this was after May 1944, when the Germans took over and the Hungarian fascists took over, it was called the Arrow Cross, and they were demanding that this Jewish battalion was handed over to the Germans. So they were in a small farm in the Hungarian-German border. Does Hungary and Germany have a border? No. It doesn't have a border.
Back then it did.
What?
Austria did.
At that time it did.
Austro-Hungarian.
No, back then
Austria was Germany.
Okay, at that time the Germans owned Austria. Okay, that's what happened, because he said the next day he knew that they were going to hand them over to the Germans. But they were still, at that point then, under the Hungarians, were still taking care of them. So they were in a farm, and this was like, I don't remember how many soldiers they were, but they were slept in the barns over here. And this fellow, Meir Kahan, was an incredibly handsome person. Now, how do I know he was handsome? Because his son learned with me in yeshiva. His son, after the war, he moved to Antwerp, and his son happened to learn yeshiva, and his son looked like a male model. His father was a good-looking person. He didn't say explicitly that he was good-looking. He was very clear from this story. He was very handsome. How do I know? Because the farmer's family were taking care of the soldiers. The farmer had a daughter. Her name was Marushka. That was her name. Hungarian girl. He comes in. He sees Meir, and her eye catches Meir, and she likes him. And she brings him like extra milk and extra cheese and gives him special attention. And then, as it came to the evening, she comes in and she says over to Meir the following words. She says, look, I like you, and I want you to be saved, because we all know, everyone knows, what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow you're going to be handed over to the Germans, and you're not going to survive the war. Once the Germans, we already know what they do to Jews. And he knew that she was right. He knew that once they go to the Germans, they're all going to be murdered. He says, look, we have over here a stable. Next to the stable, there's a place where we keep supplies. And here's the key. What I want you to do is, I want you to go tonight, when everyone's asleep. Here's the key. Go to that place, unlock it, go inside. And the war's going to be over soon. This was after Stalingrad, maybe already the Americans and the British had landed in Normandy. I don't know. It was only a couple of months left of the war. This is for sure. I'll take care of you. You see, I took care of you now. Give you milk, give you cheese, give you food. And in a couple of months, you can leave and go home to your family. So, it's incredible. It's a lifeline. The only thing is he was a yeshiva student, and he was very smart. And he knew that this girl wanted more than just to save his life. He knew he was going to have to pay her. She can do whatever she wants with him. Because at any given moment, if she doesn't like him, then he gets to be killed. So he knew he was totally vulnerable to this girl. So he describes a beautiful scene. Now the name of the book is called Between My Father and the Old Fool. The Old Fool is a reference to the way that King Solomon calls the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. He's called the old fool because he tries to seduce you with stupidity, with stupid arguments. So he says, I started walking, this is the key scene of the whole book. The whole thing revolves around 2 pages in the book, the most powerful 2 pages, in my opinion, in Holocaust literature that I've read recently. He starts to walk, and his father appears to him in a vision. And his father says to him, Mayor, what do you think you're doing now? He says, you're a yeshiva boy. He says, you know better than this. This girl, Marishka, you know what she wants from you. He says, you're better than that. You're holier than that. This is not how I raised you. And then suddenly another voice comes up, which is the voice of the old fool. And the old peasant says, Mayor, are you crazy to listen to your father now? The Torah says you have to take care of your life. Don't worry about Marishka, you'll be fine. Just a couple of months afterwards you go home, everything's going to work out just fine. His father appears, and the old fool appears, and they're going back and forth, and his brain is going crazy. What should he do? And he's walking towards, with the keys, he's walking towards this place that is going to save his life. Then he says, my father came to me one more time, and the old fool came to me, and I was looking into their eyes, and I said, who am I? Who am I? Am I the yeshiva boy, or a person that wants to focus on survival? He took the keys, and he threw them into a ditch where he could never get it. He ran back, and then there's another 60 pages left of the book. Next day, all hell is let loose. Within moments, everything he owned, everything he had is taken away from him. He sees his tefillin being trampled by a Nazi. They take off his clothing, they send him to a concentration camp. Before you know it, everything is shaved. He's wearing these the prisoner's pajamas. And then he goes in Austria, it was in Austria, from different camp to work camp until it ended up in Bergen-Belsen. He describes scenes that it's so explicit, and I don't know how Art Scroll managed to print this, but he describes how his best friend was eaten by a dog, by a Nazi dog for breaking a rule. And he describes how he sees the most horrific, horrible scenes. I don't have to tell you. Everyone here has read Holocaust literature. Everyone knows what Bergen-Belsen was like. Everyone knows what it was like. By the time the Americans came in to save them, he was just skin and bones, and everyone around him had died. Every loved person, he had not a single relative left. No brothers, no sisters, no uncles, no aunts, no grandparents, no nothing. All he had was just skin and bones, but somehow, magically, with miracles, he managed to survive the war. And the way the book is written is that at every moment, he goes another low, another terrible thing. Every single time that something bad happens, the old fool comes back and teases him and taunts him and says, Mayor, look at you now. Look what you've seen. Look what you're going through. You're nothing but skin and bones. You should have listened to Marishka. And every time he says, go away, all right, go away. And the voice would keep on coming back to haunt him until the war was over. And after the war, slowly but surely, he went back to Budapest, and then he found second cousins and things, and he ends up in Antwerp, and he ends up getting married and raising a family, a beautiful family. And then the book ends. And then there's what's called an epilogue. The epilogue is the last chapter that happened many years later. He's describing, the year is 1970-something, I don't remember, 1970s. He's dedicating a Sefer Torah in memory of his family in a Vision Shtibel in Bnei Brak, in a Hasidic Shtibel in Bnei Brak. He's dedicating a Sefer Torah. And he's there with his children, and if his grandchildren, I don't remember, he was there with his children, and whatever he had left. And he's holding the Sefer Torah, and he's dancing through the streets of Bnei Brak. And he's happy. And the voice comes back to him. And the voice says to him, Mayor, why are you happy? What are you thinking? Why are you happy? Look at you. You lost your parents. You lost your brothers, your sisters. You lost your you lost your whole family. What's there to be happy about? And the book ends with the following words. And I'm saying this to you because I know that a lot of people in this room, when I give my whole speech about, you know what I mean, being passionate about being who you are, that you're thinking to yourself, this is not easy for me. It's not easy to be a person who's passionate about being Jewish when in Budapest, with all my life that's going on, there's challenges ahead of me. Listen to what he said. And these words are such a powerful message for us. Quote, I turned to the old fool one last time, and I said to him, I don't want to hear your voice anymore. Life is about choices between seeing the sadness in life or seeing the joy in life. And I choose joy. And with that, the book ends. And with that, he lets out the secret of how he survived. Because if you're happy and you're joyous about what it means to be a Jew, and if you're proud to be supporting Israel, and so proud that we have such a beautiful history, and you're proud to be a Hungarian Jew, then you can deal with all kinds of difficulties in life. The power of joy is the ingredient to succeed in living your life, so that when you stand in front of God, when you're 120 in front of the scary angel, you're not afraid, because your whole life, every situation, you looked at the cup that was half full and the cup that was half full until eventually you don't even see that cup that's half full. Everything is just full for you. This is what Meir Kahane did. He managed to live this life of joy. And this is my secret that I'm sharing with you. If you want to live the life that was given to you in your mother's womb, it can only be this way. If when you leave the Sábáton, you say, whatever comes to me, I'm going to choose joy.
És önnek mesélt az édesapjáról, aki nem régen halt meg, másfél évvel ezelőtt, és nagyon szerény ember volt, egy magyar, Erdélyből származott, és Aradról, igen. És onnan lehetett tudni, hogy magyar volt, hogy mindig, amikor jöttek a testvérek, akkor először angolul kezdtek beszélni, aztán elkezdtek jobban belemelegedni és jídisül, és amikor már nagyon belemelegedtek, akkor már végül magyarul beszélgettek. És nagyon szerény ember volt, és nem mesélt magáról, és ezért ő elkezdte kutatni, hogy milyen volt az ő élet, és ennek kapcsán találta ezt a könyvet, ami arról szólt, hogy egy nagyon hasonló történet az ő apukájának az életével, ez a bizonyos Meir Kahane-ról szólt, ez a könyv, önéletrajzi könyve volt, hogy hogyan élte túl a háborút, és az volt a címe a könyvnek, hogy Apám és a vén bolond. És a vén bolond az pedig a Salamon király könyvére egy utalás, aki így hívja Jézerárát, a rossz ösztönt, aki mindenféle rossz tanácsokat ad, és hogy hogyan küzdött a Jézerárával a háború során, amikor ő harcolt egy magyar zsidókból álló alakulatban a háborúban, és egy nagy vallásos családban nőtt föl, jesivában, de büszke magyarként harcoltak, és a németek azok egyre nyomultak, és hát tudom, az első világháborúban harcoltak. Második világháborúban harcoltak magyar.
A szövetség 44.
Igen, és harcoltak igen. És büszkén harcoltak magyarként. És aztán a németek azt mondták, hogy akkor ezt a zsidó alakulatot, ott csak zsidók vannak az egész alakulatban, azt kérték, hogy adják át. És akkor maradtak a határon, Ausztria határon, Ausztria az akkor Németországhoz volt csatolva, és tudták, hogy másnap akkor nagyon nagy problémák lesznek, amikor elviszik őket a németek, és lakott azon a farmon, akik gondoskodtak a zsidókról addig is, amíg a németek nem viszik el, egy magyar lány, Mariska, és nagyon tetszett neki ez a zsidó fiatalember, egy valószínűleg jóképű fiatalember volt, és...
Ez a Jézerárá.
Igen. Érdekli őt is a történet. És mondta, hogy mi fog történni? El fognak vinni őket németek, és nagyon rossz lesz, de semmi aggodalomra semmi ok. Én majd gondoskodom róla, bezárunk ebbe a pincébe, és hozok neked enni. Eddig is hoztam neked enni, sajtot, tejet. És akkor ez egy értelmes fiú volt, és tudta, hogy valószínűleg nem csak sajtot és tejet akar neki hozni, hanem mást is szeretne tőle, és lehet, hogy ezt a mást azt nem kellene, és ki lesz szolgáltatva neki, és ezt ő nem akarja. És akkor leírja ezt a lényegi jelenetét, ami az egész könyvnek a középpontjában van, hogy aznap éjjel, hogy megszólalt az apukája, és mondta, hogy te egy jesivában tanultál, és nagyon jól tudod, hogy ez mit jelent, és nagyon jól tudod, hogy mit kell csinálnod, ne hallgass rá. És akkor jött a vén bolond, és az Jézerárá, és mondta, hogy de hát meg kell mentened az életedet, és ez fontosabb, és és volt ez a kulcs, amit eldobott, és ezzel a kulccsal tudott volna bemenni abba a helységbe, és ilyen módon kontroll alatt tartotta, és itt volt egy olyan rész, amikor ez kapcsolódik az előadáshoz, hogy ki vagyok én. Hogy ez a gondolat tartotta őt a jó úton, hogy arra gondol, hogy ki vagyok én, hogy szemben bírna el nézni önmagával, hogyha ő a nem jó választást csinálná, hogy ez valóban akkor az tényleg azt csinálta-e, amit tőle elváratik, hogy ez meghasonlulás lenne a részéről. És tényleg el is vitték, és táborból táborba mentek, és végül Bergenbe vezettek ki, és aztán a könyv az hosszan még sorolja azokat a borzalmakat, amiket látott, és olyan dolgokat látott, ami csodálkozik, hogy egyáltalán a Alt Scrollban ezt lehozták, hogy annyira konkrétan le vannak írva azok, amik történtek, és ismerünk sok holokauszt történetet, csak ezt csak azért mondja el, ő is ismer sok holokauszt történetet, csak emiatt a csavar miatt mondja el, és hogy mindig visszajött hozzá Jézerre, és mondta neki, hogy na mostan jól, mit választottál? Most ezt választottad inkább, hogy itt vagy, és folyamatos küzdelmét írja le, egészen a könyv utolsó oldaláig, ahol utószóban írja, hogy valamikor a 70-es években adományozott egy Sefer Tóra tekercset egy viznici zsinagógának, valahol Bnei-Berakban, és ünnepeltek, és táncoltak, és akkor utoljára hallotta a Yetzer Harát, hogy mondja neki, hogy mit örülsz, minek van örülni? Senkit nem, akit ismertél, a barátaidat, a rokonaidat, senki nincs itt. Mindegyiket elpusztították. És te örülsz? És akkor ezzel zárul a könyv, hogy ezt írja, hogy igen, mindig lehet örülni, nézni a jó részét a dolgoknak, vagy a rossz részét nézni a dolgoknak. És ez az, ami, hogyha valaki esetleg úgy gondolja, hogy amit mondott az elején a Siúnak, hogy kell keresni önmagunkat, és megtalálni, és egy nehéz szituációban is megmaradni büszkén és lelkesen zsidónak, ha valaki úgy gondolja, hogy ez nehéz, akkor gondoljon erre, hogy ő ezzel tudott megmaradni, és ezzel tudta végigélni az egész életet, hogy mindig csak az örömöt nézte az életben.
Okay, one last story. I used to work for an organization called Asia Torah, Discovery Lectures. And I used to tell over the story at the very end because the story somehow or other inspired me. The story is told by Rabbi Menachem Nissel, who was one of my role models. He passed away a few years ago. And I have to be honest, I try to research the story to find the details, and I don't know the details of the story, so I'm going to say it the way I heard it. I'm not saying the story was exactly the way it is, but this is the way I heard the story. The story begins in Los Angeles, not really Los Angeles, in what's called the Orange County, which is south of Los Angeles. It's a huge area over there of millions of people that make up California, and a young man graduates high school. And this story was happening in, I think, the early 70s. He graduates high school, and his parents agree that he can take off several months before he goes to college to travel the world. This is the way it was very common in those days, in the 70s, to go backpacking. And he had the following maslul. The plan was he was going to go on a train from Los Angeles to New York. From New York, he was going to fly over to London, then work his way from Europe. From Europe, he was going to go to the Far East and end up in Australia, and then fly back. This is going to take him, close to a year of traveling on his own. He starts off his journey, and the journey begins with Amtrak, which is the American train system. He's going from LA to New York by train. And he's sitting on his cabin, and in his cabin, there's only one other person there. The person looks like my friend over here, Rabbi Marx, okay? Hasidic Jew. And he's thinking to himself the following. He's saying, my job over here is to experience everything. I want to experience meeting people from the Far East, people from all over Europe. I've never seen a Hasidic Jew in my life. And he chooses to start up a conversation. And the conversation goes back and forth. And he says, where are you from? Originally from Poland. And he said, well, I'm also from Poland. And they start talking back and forth until eventually the young boy says over the name of his father's hometown. And the Hasidic Jew says, your father's hometown, you just mentioned, it's not really a town, it's actually a village. It's not normal that you know the name of a village because that's the village where I came from. So this was statistically impossible. You have a village in Poland, and he's sitting opposite a man that grew up, an old man that grew up in this village, and his father's from that village, and they start talking further, and eventually there's a big smile on his father's face, and says, let me guess, I think I know who your father is. He says, you can't know, my father's Christian. He says, your father's not Christian. He says, what are you talking about? Because I remember what happened before the war years. Your father said, if I ever get out of here alive, I'm giving up all my Judaism. He suffered so much during those years. I don't know the details, but you can use your imagination. I suffered so much. If I get out of here, I'm going to America and I'm going to convert to Christianity. And he gives him real details. And the boy realizes that this answers all kinds of questions that he had growing up, all kinds of strange things that the parents wouldn't talk about this and wouldn't talk about this. It sounded that the story had to be true. So he says to the Hasidic Jew, what do I do now? So he said, well, do a detour, go to Jerusalem. And there you'll have your questions answered. Okay, he goes to Europe, he goes to Jerusalem, and in Jerusalem he goes to the Kotel, to the Wailing Wall, and there he meets a man called Rabbi Meir Schuster of blessed memory. I used to call it to be Schusterized. This is the person who used to go up to strangers with backpacks and say, you know, do you have the time? You go like start a conversation, invite him. The bottom line is he ended up in Ur Sameach. Ur Sameach is a yeshiva that he comes in there and he tells over his story. And Rabbi Bullman says, okay, let's learn Torah. And he starts to learn Torah. And after 1 month of learning Torah, he realizes a small little teeny-weeny problem. And that is, he forgot to tell his parents. Duh. You know what I mean? Okay, small little problem. So he figures, okay, I'm just going to have to do it. He gets on the phone, he calls up his parents, and he asks for both his mother and father to be on the line. And they said, where are you now? I'll tell you in a moment. Is mom on the line? Is dad on the line? He says, yeah. So father says, where are you? He says, I'm in Jerusalem. He says, what? What are you doing in Jerusalem? He says, I'm actually in a yeshiva. So the parents say, are you crazy? He says, yeah, I found out our little secret that we're Jewish. At that point then, the father faints. The father passes out. The mother says, I'll call you back in a few minutes. And the father gets back on the phone and says to his son, he says, first of all, I forbid you from doing what you're doing. Secondly, you're crazy because you don't know what it means to be a Jew. To be a Jew, I saw what it means to be a Jew. I saw the suffering. I know our history. It's not worth it. Get out of there as soon as you can. But if you insist on carrying with this craziness, I'm going to send you the one thing I kept from my past, which was a book. And the book came, and the book was written in Hebrew. And in that book, Reb Bullman opens up. It's a Hebrew book. And that book, believe it or not, is written by a Jew that was his great-grandfather. And in it writes the following words in his introduction. It says, everyone who knows me knows I'm not a person to write books. And everyone who knows me knows that I'm not the kind of person to show off my Torah knowledge. But I see what's happening to our youth today. The children of today are disappearing. They're assimilating. They're getting into all kinds of communism, all kinds of isms. And I'm worried. And I'm writing this book, so one day maybe one of my children will read this book and realize that they had a grandfather or a great-grandfather that was proud to be Jewish, was proud of the Jewish way of life, and that we stood for something. And that is what was written in that book. And why am I telling you this? And I'm telling you I'm a little bit nervous because I'm doing this for the very first time. It's because 2 years ago, my oldest son discovered a book on the internet. We knew the book existed, written by my great-grandfather. And it was called Mevasser Tov. That was the name of the book. I didn't know anything about it. My father never mentioned it to me. It was written by my great-grandfather. And then my son had a wedding, another son. I said, you know what? Let's print it. Let's redo it. Let's put footnotes. Let's fix up the book. Use it. I don't know what the book was all about. It turns out that the book is a technical Talmudic book, but it has an introduction. And I'm telling you, this is the truth because you can read it in here. My great-grandfather, okay, Rabbi Nissel, that's my father's name. His son was my grandfather. He writes that anyone that knows me knows I don't write books. I'm not the kind of person. He was a rabbi in a city called Dej in Transylvania. He said, I'm not writing books, but you should know that I see what's happening to the young people today. And I want to write a book that they should know a little bit about who their family was. And I don't know if this is the same rabbi, the same person. I have no idea, because I don't know. You know, Poland could have been Hungary. I don't know. I just know that he talks in there and he says, to my dear children, you should know what it means. You have to live a life and dedicate it to the beauty of our Torah. That's what he writes, the message at the beginning and introducing this book. This book I'm giving to Rav Kelly, okay, over here. So he should enjoy it because it has over here. It's a personal, I wrote a personal introduction. But what I want to say to every person over here, and with this I finish my visit to Hungary over here. What? Whatever you're saying is good. I have no idea what you're saying. But it's all all the Hungarian rabbis. What?
It's Klausenberg.
Okay.
The Jewish called Klausenberg, but it's Klausenberg.
There we go. Okay. So I just wanted to say the following thing. I don't realize how lucky you are. I don't know if you realize how lucky you have that you have the Lativ community under the leadership of Kelly, because I've traveled a lot, and most places I go, the people running the show are people like me, right? So, okay, so, you know, so I'm a rabbi, right? But this is the real thing. You've got the real thing over here, okay? You have someone you can look up to that a little bit reminds you of what a Jew looked like walking around the streets of Budapest. This is what they were. He did is the beauty of what he does. He's not playing games over here. You're getting authentic Torah over here. You're getting from him the real thing, which is incredibly inspiring. Now, I'm not saying to you that tomorrow you should look like him or like him. I'm not saying that, okay? I'm saying you should look like yourselves. You should look like yourselves. But what I feel is that each one of you, as yourselves, has a story to tell that's a crucial part of Jewish history at a crucial time. You've got help over here. You have people to talk to. You've got Reb Shia. You've got other incredibly inspirational people. And it's not like Budapest is a desert. You have who to talk to, but you have to do it your way. And to do it your way, you have to be in touch with yourself. And you've got to stop rushing with your lives. And stop thinking, you know, when your mind is wandering, you're thinking about work. And that's what you do. And then we find you relax, you watch a movie, or you go on a vacation, and you don't stop and think about, well, what about me? What am I all about? What's my life? And this is my challenge to you, is that you try and live the life that you were created for. So that when you go up and they ask you, what's your name? You know exactly the answer. And the key to doing everything is to say how beautiful, how happy it is to be a Jew, and to always choose a life that's filled with joy. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Az utolsó történetnek azt mesélte el, hogy volt egy ilyen fiatalember Amerikában valahol, aki kitalálta, hogy ő már pedig körbeutazza a világot, és teljesen fel is készült rá, körülbelül 1 év alatt megvette minden jegyet, hogy először egy vonattal utazik föl a New Yorkba, és onnantól kezdve repül, és megy körbe-körbe az egész világon, egész Európa, Kína, Ausztrália, és visszaér, ahonnan indult. És amikor az először felszáll a vonatra, akkor ott ül abban a kabinban, pont ahol ő ül, egy olyan úriember, aki úgy van fölöltözve, mint a haszid vendégünk. És aztán arra gondol, hogy érdekes, hogy pont azért is indultam útra, hogy megismerkedjek ilyen különleges emberekkel, például akik Kínában élnek, úgyhogy miért is ne beszélgetnék ezzel az emberrel. És ahogy beszélgetnek, kiderül, mondja ez az ember, hogy ő tulajdonképpen Lengyelországban született, egy kis faluban, és mondja, hogy hát az ő apukája is Lengyelországban született, és pontosan abban a kis faluban született. És mondja, hogy hát és ismerem is az apukádat, a beszélgetésből, meg a szövegkörnyezetből, hogy kezd rájönni, hogy az lehetetlenség, mert én apukám nem volt zsidó. De zsidó volt. Mert emlékszem, hogy mondta, hogy ha ő egyszer innen kijut ebből a nehéz szituációban, amiben vannak, akkor ő elhagyja az egész zsidóságot, és keresztényként fog élni teljesen asszimilálva. És ahogy mondja tovább, egyre inkább az emberben tudatosodik a fiatal emberben, hogy tényleg muszáj igazni a történet, mert ennyi véletlen egybeesés nem létezik, hogy ez mind kitalálta, és akkor mondja, hogy akkor most mi a teendő? Most így erre így rájöttünk, hogy ő akkor most tulajdonképpen zsidó, és akkor igen, akkor az a teendő, hogy el kell menni Jeruzsálembe, ott volt a falnál, és aki megtalálta, az pont egy Rosh Yeshiva volt, azt mondom, Orszámiach volt egy Rosh Yeshiva, Meir Schuster, Rabbi Schuster.
Rosh Yeshiva was Rabban. Rosh Schuster was at the wall, and the Rabban was the Rosh Yeshiva that read the book.
Okay. Ő vitte be az Orszámiachba, és aztán az Orszámiachban tanult egy hónap.
Igen, ő bevitte a falnál, látott egy embert a hátitáskával, és akkor bevitte oda tanulni, csak elfelejtett szólni a szüleinek, és akkor szólt a szüleinek, fölhívta a telefonon, és akart, hogy egyszerre mindketten hallják, és akkor mondta, hogy hol vagy, Jeruzsálemben? És mit csinálsz, egy jesivában tanulsz? Apja egyből elájult. És az anyja pedig mondta, hogy igen, én értem, egyrészt ne csináld, megtiltom neked.
Nem, azt az apja mondta.
Azt az apja mondta. Azt hittem az anyja mondta.
Pár perc múlva visszahívlak,
visszahívta, és mondta, hogy megtiltja, és nem is tudod, hogy mit jelent az, mert fogalmat sincs róla, és nem tudod, hogy milyen szenvedéssel jár. És ha tudnád, akkor nem csinálnád. És de ha mégis esetleg ezzel együtt akarod csinálni, akkor küldök neked egy könyvet. És küldi a könyvet, és a könyvet a dédapja írta, és héberül van, és az első oldalon azt írja, hogy mindenki, aki ismer, azt tudja rólam, mondja a déd nagyapja, hogy nem vagyok egy olyan ember, aki könyveket ír, megosztja a Tóra gondolatait, és nem szokásom ezt nekem csinálni, csak azért csinálom, mert látom, hogy milyen dolgok vannak a világban, hogy milyen asszimiláció van, és hogyha egyszer lesz egy leszármazottam, aki majd érdeklődik, akkor tudja meg azt, hogy milyen érzés teljesen büszke zsidóként élni, és az embernek teljesíteni a feladatát, és ez milyen érzés ez. És mondta, az az érdekesség ebben az egész történetben, hogy ha jól tudom, ő déd nagyapjának is van egy könyve, amit megtaláltak, ezt most adta át a Ráckeve-nek, és abban a bevezetőben szóról szóra ugyanezt írja le. És nem biztos, hogy ez ugyanaz a rabbi volt, ez csak ugyanazt látta, és ugyanazt élte meg, és ugyanaz motiválta a könyvnek az írására. De minden esetre megtalálták ezt a könyvet, és elhatározták, hogy kinyomtatják újra. Alapvetően talmudi értekezések vannak benne, csak ez a bevezetője, amiből ő idézett, és ez most akkor ez megvan nekünk egy példányban, és hogy ti, akik itt ültök, hogy tudjátok meg azt, hogy milyen különleges lehetőség az, ami van nektek, mert általában világon bárhol, hogyha van egy olyasmi szervezet, mint a Lativ, akkor azt általában azt mondja, hogy olyan rabbi működteti, mint ő, viszont nem olyan, mint a Ráckeve, aki azt mondja, ő az igazi, aki tényleg tanul és tényleg autentikus. Tudod, ez nem azt jelenti, hogy holnap úgy kell néznetek, mint a Ráckeve, úgy kell viselkednetek, és annak kell lennetek, akik vagytok, csak ezzel együtt kell velük is beszélgetni, a siével, a Ráckeve-vel, vannak kérdéseitek, autentikus emberekkel, és felfedezni a saját zsidóságotokat, és így élni.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.